Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Nancy Drew, Season 4, Episode 12, the penultimate episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Also, first and foremost, we're kind of picking up with the Ace and Nancy stuff. They haven't really talked since Nancy kind of dropped that bomb on them last episode that it's like, right, maybe we had something to do with this ghost, like your Jane Doe. And Ace is kind of running from it, but because he's like, right, because at the end of the day, he is scared that if they find out the truth about what happened to her, that she'd leave. So it is this complicated, and it's this interesting parallel between Nancy and Ace that they're both in the same regard of like, they're both trying to do something selfless, but there's also that selfish angle tied to it. To be fair, I mean, I think there's always going to be a little bit of selfishness tied to anything that you do. There's like, because Ace has found someone that he's trying to move on with, and it's just like, I'm kind of happy, but it's like, yeah, even, Bess warned him about this. Once again, she's been down this road herself, and Nancy's kind of doing the same thing, because for her way of resolving a lot of issues that she might have is like, hey, I'm solving this mystery. It's a little bit for me, but it's also because I legitimately do believe it will help people in the long run. And sadly for her, it is a situation. She even says later on that solving a mystery, she sometimes wonders, like, it feels like lately when I solve a mystery, all I'm doing is making things worse and leaving other people to have to pick up the pieces, you know? Because at the end of the day, for her, it's like, right, I'm helping your ghost move on. I'm like, she deserves the truth. You deserve the truth. But it's also Nancy's own guilt of, I used to sin her and I just don't know why I would do that. Well, I would never be the person to do that. It's like, well, now we found out why. I mean, first and foremost, Ace ends up finding out about who the ghost is. We find out her name is Alice. She was a captain on a boat. Apparently there was a fire. And it's like, right. So Ace has memories of going on the boat with his dad, saying there was no captain. But even Nancy was like, is that normal? And he was like, yeah, it could be. And so it's like, okay, so his memories have been messed with. It's that element to it that I constantly forget, that the memory wipe only reshaping of reality and memories only happens, not even reality, just memories, happens only in Horseshoe Bay. I keep forgetting, like, it doesn't like change everyone's minds outside, like, because they went to the town over, Trenton or whatever, and it's like, yeah, there was a fire and stuff like that, but it was never like, there was a fire on a boat. The guy wasn't able to get close enough to tell what was going on, and he was hoping like, oh, maybe I hear about it in the news, but nothing ever came up, because I forgot, like, it does, because once again, that's how we first kind of got onto this in the first place, knowing that it's that Judge Abbott case where it's like, yeah, it didn't extend outside of Horseshoe Bay. So like I said, that was an element I kind of forgot about. But we found out who Alice was, and she remembers who she was the moment Ace found her place, because he had saw her picture once he looked through the photos of like the captains, and she was one. And it's interesting how the stories combine, like Nancy's helping with Tristan's circumstances help them find the truth, because they're trying to reverse what's happening to Tristan, because that's the only way to stop all of this. Because Callie does plan on killing him, because it's either like, oh, I'm just going to let this go through until he dies, or it's like, right, he's unreliable as a senior. His mom and dad already tried to save him. Can't let that happen again. Can't let there be a chance that they might break this cycle. Even though she's adamant about it not being broken, I think she's scared that it might be. But it might just be like, hey, Tristan's near the end of his lifespan, maybe, or I'm just going to expedite it faster, because this cycle needs to continue. And so once again, it's like, I get what, like, I don't agree with it, but I think I'm understanding why she's so adamant about it. It's because it's her family heritage. It is her legacy. It is something her family being the minder for the senior. It's defined their family for generations. It's defined her. It's been her greatest purpose. And in her own mind, she believes, hey, I'm doing something good for Horseshoe Bay, because, you know, keeping the truth away kind of builds this place on a better foundation. But even Nick calls her out. It's like, that's a manipulation, a very systemic one, where it's like, you get to pick and choose what crimes get erased and which ones don't. I mean, because like, she just has this like backwards way of thinking that she's doing good. Now, I mean, who cares? Because what I'm about to say is like, in her family's mind, who cares about the sacrifices that have to be made of like the people that are constantly destroyed? There are 8 people whose lives were destroyed, who were turned into something they never asked to be. 8 people before Tristan, and you did the same thing again, and you're willing to do it to a 10th person as well. Like, this cycle needs to be broken, but the fact is and I think that's also the part of, like, no one, once again, ever sees himself as a villain of the story. They see, like, she sees herself as, like, I'm a hero. My family has done nothing but good for this town. We've kind of forced this town into the good-natured place that it is, you know? Even though we had to falsify stuff, even though we had to use a supernatural sin eater to kind of erase the ugliness of our history, it's like, that's once again, it's like if you hide away the ugliness, you can't grow, you can't learn from it if you don't remember it. Once again, that's the point of knowing history, is so that you never make the mistake again. And also, what terrible crimes went unpunished, what was erased, what, you know, that there is no real justice if everything just kind of gets swept under the rug. But I might have even called her Kelly earlier. I keep doing that. It's Callie. I don't remember if I called her Callie earlier. I might have called her Kelly. But Callie, like, it's just, this is, in her mind, her form of justice, and she's not swaying from it. Because they find out that the statue that scream is what calls Tristan and transforms him. That creature is like the mother of monsters. So she was captured and brought here and forced to make the Sin Eater. So even Tristan's like, oh, so that kind of in a weird way makes her my mom. And it's like, in a weird way, she was. And when the time came, Tristan couldn't destroy her, but by finally freeing her, she is able to die. But she apologized, and it's like, I'm sorry that, like, they forced me to, brought me here, and I basically made you and all the pain that you and your previous lives had to go through. And she's like apologetic, and she left behind the ingredient they needed for the device that lets them see the truth of the sins that were eaten. So not only did Nancy help once again save Tristan, but also gave her the means to finally find out what happened. And we find out what happened. It was an accident. I knew something had to go on with that curse. Like, just Ace dropping it in the water. I'm like, oh. I was like, is that all that's going to happen? I was like, maybe is that supposed to be like, oh, maybe it's just going to be I was like, is that going to come back later on in the season? I was like, there's not that, because that was like episode 10, wasn't it? That they dropped that curse in there. Maybe, if I remember correctly, I'm like, that wasn't, yeah, it had to be like episode, yeah, because that was like either episode 9 or 10. That was the episode where everyone switched bodies. But I was like, oh, they brought and brained that back up near the end of the season. I'm like, there's not that many episodes left. So maybe it's just going to be one of those things of like, in the universe, even though the show's over, like in somewhere in the universe, that storyline would still come back up. It's like, nope, it came back up because it played a massive part in everything going down. I was like, is that really just going to be like, because it lighting up, it felt like that was on purpose. But it's like, yeah, because we got the rewrite, because we saw the false memory that Ace and his dad had. Or it could be the thought that it's like, oh no, it's just like, technically we were seeing the real reality, but it was warped because like Alice wasn't there for sure. So, you know, I'm sure if you go back to the episode, you wouldn't see like anyone in the cabin of the ship, but it's still like, I think that's so interesting. But it's like, for that to come back in that regard, like I guess it's just like it led to some explosion, like something exploded in the cabin of the ship, and she was trapped in there by a fire. But at the same time, Ace's dad was overboard, so Ace was torn between saving Alice, someone he didn't know, or saving his dad, and he chose to save his dad, and Alice died because of it. He needed someone to talk to in that moment. He was grief-stricken about, like, I'm responsible for her death. It's like, there's no alleviating that. Like, he was always going to feel that, because it's like, right, I specifically chose to save my dad over her, and he's like, I got a girl killed, and that's what Nancy decided to wipe away the sin. But for Ace, like, I can understand his frustration, because there is that parallel of your pain, all the things you go through like, you are a culmination of your experiences. They help make you into who you are. And Nancy's pain and everything that she's going through, the heartbreak, like every aspect of that has made her into who she is. And for Ace, it's like, you kind of made me lose a little who I am, because like, regardless of what I was going through, you made that decision on your own, because for him, for her, it's like, I wanted to save you. You weren't yourself in that moment. You were so consumed by your grief. But it's like, my grief, because Nancy should know that better than anyone. Once again, it's like, the grief of losing her mom, what did she do? Like, she kind of buried herself, and eventually she found her way through it. But it's like, that growth was necessary for her. For Ace, it's like, you kind of took that away from me. That was my pain. I didn't ask you to just take it away from me, because now everyone forgot about Alice. Like, that's why she ended up being nameless. You know, you took that away from her as well by covering up what I did, because Nancy thought she was doing the right thing. Like, this is someone she cares about. She wanted to do right by him, because I think there's just so much complicated stuff between them, because it was the whole conversation of, you haven't moved on. You're trying to date a ghost right now, and that's not tenable. It's like, well, you're dating a monster, and that's not tenable. And Nancy's like, I haven't gotten over you. I haven't moved on. I never said I did. It's like, when things get a little complicated or hard, you want to like cut bait and run, because he's done it time and time again. And it's like, right. When things, rather than like, hey, let's fight for what's happening between us, what did Ace do? He just kind of called it quits. And it's just been this complicated, their relationship is just, it's sad to see the roller coaster that it has become. But I think that's also the sad hypocrisy, where it's just like, what did Nancy do? Like, she tried to make, like, he kind of, like, when things kind of get a little difficult, what did he do? Run? I guess you could make the argument Nancy's kind of done the same thing too, because she ran from her grief. Understandable, but now she tried to make Ace kind of run from his grief, because Nancy thought that this is how she could help, you know? So she shouldn't have gone to the lengths that she did, but it's also, as someone who's going through pain and seeing Ace not even be himself because of that pain, I can see why in her mind it's like, I want to alleviate that for you. You shouldn't have to drown in guilt over something that you're not responsible for. But it's also like, it kind of was, because I threw the curse jar in the water, and that kind of led to all of that. So, and now Ace ends up telling Alice the truth, and she moves on, because for her it's like, she never knew that she'd find, like, something she's been looking for her entire life, she finally found, and it was peace. And it's like, I wish you could have had a little bit longer of a life. Because I think even in those moments, Ace is seeing this for what it really was. It's just like, right, I was just kind of grasping onto something. I knew we had some kind of connection, even if I couldn't remember it. Now I know what that connection is. Same thing with Nancy and Tristan. There is something deeper there, to the point the original Senator's like, I know you, like, we used to walk, like, there's something there, and I'm just not sure what. That's why I was like, not unless Nancy is supposed to be like some reincarnation. I feel like her ancestor and the original Senator had some connection way, way, way back in the day, because obviously it's like, her family has deep ties to Horseshoe Bay, so you would assume, like, her family would extend even all the way back then as well. But because we never really, I don't know if that was just kind of a Tristan and her thing he was talking about, but it felt like that was more like a him thing rather than a Tristan thing. Like, the fact is, he kind of went out of his way to kind of reach out to her, be like, this is where you'll find, like, all the sins of the Senator, and like, that we used to walk through the, like, there's something there, just not quite sure what. I mean, they're really setting up all the, like, relationship stuff at the, to be fair, Bess is the only one who went into this season already kind of having Bess and Carson are the ones that kind of went into this season with a relationship already, and now, like, everyone else is kind of finding their way. Nick and Jade and George and Home Dude, which Nick and George had that whole conversation because someone wants to buy the claw, and George is reluctant to kind of let it go because it's been in their family for so long. For her, it's like, the claw was like the first thing I owned, and she thought it would stay in the fan family. She'd even talked to Jesse about it, and Jesse's like, yeah, I kind of thought it'd be kind of ours. The person who wants to buy it isn't going to change it. They want to apparently keep it the same, but George also realizes the reason why she was holding on to it, not only nostalgia, but she's putting herself out there. She's trying to, like, get admission to a specific college, or was it like a college or a program she's trying to get admitted to that's out of state, but she wanted to hold on to the claw that in case things didn't work out, she could always come. It was supposed to be her safety net. So it is nostalgia, and then because of what it means to her family, but it's also because, things are changing. Even for Nick, it's like he bought the claw and became a partner in all of it because it was what he needed at the time, because he was lost and he needed something to grab onto. He needed something to kind of stabilize him. But now, like, both him and George are different people. They've grown. Their lives are taking them in different directions. And it's like they don't need the call to kind of be their grounding rod necessarily. Especially for George, it's like, yeah, her siblings are getting older. Her mom's in a better place. So it's like my mom's stable enough that I don't need to kind of stay in Horseshoe Bay. Once again, just seeing how sadly we see that the group is drifting apart. I feel like the only person who will probably stay by the end of the series will be, I'd assume Bess, just because of the, historical society of it all. I can see her being the only one that stays. Maybe Nancy as well, not unless she tries to expand like the Drew investigation. So I could definitely see them both being the ones to stay. Maybe Ace, but I don't know. Maybe it's just going to be a thing if they don't get to see each other that often anymore, but the different paths that their lives are taking them down. Ryan, it's just kind of thrown in this last episode because I thought she'd actually pop up in the season more and more, considering like her and Ryan kind of hit it off because they both want revenge against the Glasses. But it's like, yeah, the woman he met like earlier in this, like quite a few episodes back, they're dating now, and she kind of wants Ryan to kind of go on this journey with her. In fact, she's like, yo, let's rob the Glasses and kind of like destroy their name and reputation while they're in jail. It'd be easy to do it, but Ryan's not too keen on it because it's like getting revenge, doing whatever you want to. It's like, yeah, my family kind of did that for so long and they were miserable, especially as someone who, for him, he's like, I wasted so much of my life kind of being the knucklehead that I was, but I built so much for myself, you know? I found my family, I found my footing, and I built a life for myself here, like one of it on his own, you know? Not with his dad's connection, like he found something he's good at, you know, with all these relics and stuff, and he kind of convinced her to stick around for a little bit. So once again, things kind of working on the front. Carson deciding what he's going to do about the whole kid situation. Because for him, it's like, I've given my entire heart to just being Nancy's dad. So kind of like Jean's trying to figure out what she wants. And even he's kind of wondering, like, you know, but I love what Ryan said. It's like, yeah, you made one of the best people. You helped raise and make one of the best people I know in the world, Nancy. So it's like, I know you'll be kind of fine doing it the second time around, because it's not something he ever thought was possible, because it's like, well, probably like especially after Kate died, it probably never even crossed his mind for another kid. But like, because Nancy tells him that, she's like, you have your heart. There's plenty of heart to go around, because it's like, you never thought you'd find someone outside of mom, but you found Jean, and you have me in your heart. So you're definitely going to have enough room to and heart to give to this child this other kid as well. So kind of a big decision, but I think they're going to probably both come together. Jean's probably leaning one way, but maybe it's a situation of maybe Carson's decision will nudge her more in that direction, or maybe it's a thing of they'll mutually come together to the conclusion. Completely like neutrally 50-50. We'll see how that plays out. We also had the Lovett situation. She was shutting down this particular kind of equinox thing that they do as a town, and Bess just never understood why, because it has its supernatural ties. The whole point is, like, whatever regrets you have, you basically set a bonfire and you like make these things that are representative of your regrets, and you kind of burn them, and from those ashes something new can essentially arise. And it's like, why does Lovett why is she like so upset about all this? And to the point, Bess was like, right, I know there was something in your past, that leave of absence you took when you were police chief somewhere else. That has to have something to do with this, like who hurt you? And so ultimately we find out her town, she was the chief of a town that had a drug problem. And for her, it's like, right, when you let things fester for too long, if you don't do anything, if you don't nip it in the bud immediately, it could foster into so much more and hurt other people. Because she always wanted to be police chief, but then it became a hard thing when she had to start arresting people she knows and friends who were caught up in the drug stuff. And I guess the hard aspect of like, what that meant when it's like, this is your community, these are people you know, and you're having to arrest them and seeing how the drugs have kind of destroyed them in your community. Or maybe it's like because you let them off, because you slacked, because it is people you know and these are friends, you didn't handle things like the way you should have, and it just snowballed and things kind of got worse. And that's why she's like, or maybe she felt like because I didn't nip stuff in the bud when I had the chance, it caused so many more issues later on. And so that's what she's kind of treating the supernatural like. And it sounds like, yes, it's scary. Yes, there is a scary aspect to the supernatural, but that doesn't define the supernatural all around. Like, that is a part of this town, and look what it's done. Like there is good from it. Like, look at how we've all gathered around that. It doesn't just have to be this one-dimensional thing of like, oh, the supernatural is just scary. Because I think it is a thing of, she sees it as kind of like this drug that is this bad thing, and if you don't nip it in the bud, it could spread like wildfire and cause, because this town's been through so much, trauma and pain. But it's like, yes, but kind of like, I think similar parallel to the Ace and Nancy of it all. You can grow from that. It doesn't have to fully define you. It is a part of you, but it isn't all of you. Just like the supernatural isn't all bad. Good can come from it in some regards. So love is kind of like, I'll keep an eye on you in this. So if you think this is okay and this is what the town wants, then sure, so be it. So I guess there is no best getting the historical society back from Callie. I guess it's just simple, like, still going to do the underground thing, probably getting Jesse and Birdie to help her in that regard. But the final sting of the episode being Callie, it's like, oh, you want truth? Okay, so now I put it in the town's water supply, so now every sin that was ever eaten is going to be released to everyone. It's like, because for her, it's like, okay, my job is over. I'm going out, deuces, middle fingers up to everyone. Because if I can't have my way, she kind of added like the tantrum child. A child throwing a tantrum. I went about saying that in a weird way. Like, being like, okay, if I can't have my way, I'm just going to burn this to the ground. So I'm wondering, does her family have any secrets buried that she doesn't know? Also got any sins that were kind of eaten. But it seems like it's affecting everyone in town. So quite the setup for a finale. What that all means, because it feels wild that, like, but it feels like it's going to end in a big way. But like, what does this mean for Horseshoe Bay? How is this all going to play out? I have no idea. I wasn't expecting. I figured there'd be one last thing. I thought, in fact, it was going to be that monster, the mother of monsters. I thought, like, when Tristan didn't do anything, I thought she was going to take off, and that was going to be the final threat they had to do. It was like, no, Horseshoe Bay being its own undoing, its secrets, the sins that have been eaten, that have been forgotten, that have been warped and twisted. And I'm curious to see what happens to Callie at the end of this. Will she just disappear? At the end of the day, Horseshoe Bay is still her home. So maybe it kind of correlates to what I was thinking before we found out who Callie really was and her role to play in all this. I was thinking, my theory was, some supernatural thing's going to happen. She's been very anti-supernatural, yada, 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 so on and so forth. Once again, it just makes her the massive hypocrite that she is. But once again, in her mind, it's like, right, but this is a controlled, very specific supernatural, like, our supernatural thing is good and all your other stuff is blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter because mine is ingrained with making this town into the beautiful place it is. Yours is just a stain on this town's history. It's kind of how she looks at the historical society and all the supernatural stuff that Bess cares about. But at the end of the day, I was thinking like maybe like a supernatural thing will happen and she'll have to rely on the Drew crew to kind of help solve it. And I think that's going to be the case here. I'm so curious to see, because I'm assuming all this is going to tie into Love It being like, see what happens. Like, if you hadn't probably gathered everyone like you did, like what her reaction to all of this is going to be. Or can they even really do anything to Callie, considering like she did kind of probably like it? I think that would be considered like poisoning the town, so she could suffer some ramifications. Maybe, I don't know. I'm so curious to see how that plays out. Once again, and what secrets get revealed and, what sins got eaten. I'm curious to see what this means at the end for Tristan doesn't mean it. Like, he might end up having to sacrifice himself. The only way to kind of save the town, he might have to eat all their sins, or this might once again kind of go with the ace of it all of like, right, don't take it away. We kind of have to, it's my pain. I have to live with it. The mistakes or crime I committed, I have to live with it. I have to face the consequences. Maybe it's something like that. Well, because his sins eaten range from so many different things, from covering up an attempted murder to covering up an affair, so on and so forth, right? So who knows in the grand scheme of things how that all plays out. I also love we got, because I think I brought that up before in a previous episode, like, we never found out who was the person to call Nancy. I wonder, once again, the way they were setting up in season 3's finale, maybe it was going to be something else, but they shifted it and made it kind of nothing, because the person responsible for calling Nancy is the guy who works at the graveyard or whatever, because he was trying to protect his own job. So it's like, oh, that's all that was? Interesting. That was just one of those major loose threads that I'm like, I wonder, did they have plans to make that something else? But now it's like, because this was the final season, they couldn't build it out the way they wanted it to. So maybe it was supposed to be something bigger, but then it's like, nah, this is all it's going to be. Like I said, I could be mistaken. So next episode is the series finale. So where all this takes us, how this all plays out, I'm so curious to ultimately see what happens, how this series comes to an end. It feels so unreal to be here at the end of it. It's kind of sad that for this to be the end. I wish we had a little bit more time, but everything comes to an end. I mean, especially with the storyline being where it is, everyone's kind of, once again, going their separate ways, potentially settling a claw. Like, it feels like the end in so many regards, but every ending is a new beginning. Once again, it's not like we'll get those new beginnings, but within the universe of Nancy Drew, there are new beginnings for all these characters awaiting on the horizon of this series finale. So we'll see how it all plays out and what it means for these characters, in their respective futures in this universe. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.